Tattoo artists of Reddit, do you judge people for the tattoos they want to get? If so, what was the one you really thought was stupid? Story 1. As a tattooist, I personally find it awkward when clients want memorial tattoos. Let me explain. I know everyone deals with grief in many ways. I can begin to imagine the process. But usually they want it focused on their death, the fact they have died. The date, and sometimes the time how they died, many other ways about the focus on the death. I try to persuade them that they should maybe celebrate their life, their memories, something nice that reminds them of them. I think it's less depressing for the client if they look at the tattoo and they're reminded of happy times rather than the worst time that's happened to them. Edit. Totally unexpected. Great, albeit sad reading everyone's stories. Thanks for the gold. Story 2. I was getting tattooed when an 18-year-old girl came in asking to get no fear inside of her lip before she went off to college. The artist told her if she wanted to get that in 6 months on a visit home that he would do it for free. This is why I love my shop. Story 3. About 2 years ago I was getting my first tattoo, and during a break after 3 hours or so me and my tattoo artist went outside to smoke and chat a little. Then this guy came at us and gave the artist a crumpled paper, and he's like, "You gotta tattoo this on my entire back," without any introduction. I watched as the artist folded the paper, and it was a completely orange badly drawn woman sitting backwards while spreading her cheeks while she took a. I tried my best to not lose my, and so did my tattoo artist as he gently tried to explain to this dude that he isn't up for this, and neither is the others in that shop. Meanwhile the guy tries to convince him to do it and that he is willing to pay a lot of money for it. But eventually he left, and my tattoo artist explained he gets at least 3 of these kind of people every 2 weeks or so, and it wasn't even the worst design he hasn't seen. Story 4. I remember an artist on here telling a story about how some guy wanted words on his, so he could put words in your mouth. I don't know how any tattoo artist could hear that request without judging in some way. Story 5. Not an artist, but more of a LPT. I had a friend who loved dolphins, had one tattooed on her lower pelvic hip bone area in her 20s, then had 4 children and needed a cesarean section delivery. Her doctor made sure to tell her that he strategically placed his incision so her scar would look like a surfboard for her whale. Oh. Story 6. I have 2 stories. My boyfriend is the artist, so I hear a lot of stories. The 2 that come up frequently about what tattoos he has judged at all are these. A woman comes in and wants an infinity symbol. Sure, easy enough, except she wants it made out of other smaller infinity symbols. The artist who did it died a little inside. This one my boyfriend did, and I was there for this one. A guy comes in wanting his girlfriend's name tattooed on him. Stupid, yet common, but he wants her name on his penis. Her name Chastity. There is a guy walking around with Chastity on his. Also, the shop charges a $100 holding fee on top of what the tattoo would normal cost. Story 7. During my apprenticeship I tattooed a kid who lost a bet. It was his friend's signature on his. That being said, I didn't really judge him for that. He was young and dumb. When it comes to judging clients, it's a lot less to do with the tattoo they're getting than how they behave in the chair and the kinds of things they say. But the tattoo was definitely the dumbest one I did. Story 8. I had a guy message wanting a portrait of his son. His kid was about 45 years old in this picture, and he was putting his middle finger up and covering his mouth and nose with his hand. I thought it was different but showed some uniqueness to it, so fair enough, I agreed to do it. Before his appointment he asked if I could remove the hand. I explained I can't guess what his mouth and nose look like. He never got back to me with an alternative picture. Story 9. So a buddy of mine is a traveling tattoo artist. He just travels the world and works as a guest artist at tattoo shops. So this time he's in Thailand and an older white couple comes in. Husband seems to have had a few drinks. Husband wants to have his wife's name tattooed on his genitals. My buddy straight up denies the request, drunk, genitals, etc., but another artist decides to go through with it. Next day the couple returns, but they are instead arguing on the way in. Apparently it was a "if you do it, you'll do it too" kind of agreement, but the wife wants no part of it. Story 10. We had a guy come in who wanted a pinup girl on his arm, except he wanted the girl to be super fat. He then went on to talk about how much he loved fat chicks. At one point he looked at the owner's daughter, who was, I'm guessing, around 250 pounds, and said, "Sorry, but you're too small for me. I like them heavy." After some back and forth we came up with a design he liked and we did business. As long as the artist had some creative license with what they were doing, they never actually judged. It was when they had to do that one flash butterfly again or barbed wire that they judged. And if that is what you really want, then cool. Just understand that at least 5 people in the immediate area have the exact same one. Story 11. I try not to judge, but I have a difficult time not doing so sometimes. The most interesting tattoo I've ever done was on a guy who came in wanting the words, "Bridget, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I love you." I would say it was the most dumb tattoo I've ever done, but, well, you just have to have the full picture. The story goes like this. 38-year-old guy was dating and living with his girlfriend of 2 years. She wanted to get married. He was reluctant because she didn't fit some ideals he had in his head for his long-term partner. They were all superficial things. She was shorter than he liked, and blonde. He preferred brunettes, so she left him. 2 months later he realizes he made a huge mistake. The only problem is that she's moved on and is dating someone and has made it clear that she's not interested. This is when this gentleman comes to get the tattoo that is going to solve all of his problems. He tells me that he's arranged to have dinner with her in a week. He intends to plead for her to come back to him, and when she inevitably doubts his sincerity, he will reveal his tattoo as a sign of his commitment. I try to talk him out of it, but he's an adult, sober, and of seemingly sound mind. I do the tattoo. Cut to that very next day. It's my off day. I'm at my friend's subdivision pool, and I notice this guy who is remarkably attractive. He's also playing around with some of the kids there, and I lean over to my friend and inquire as to Hottie McHottiePants' identity. She tells me about how he's the new boyfriend of her pretty blonde neighbor who had just gotten out of a long-term relationship. Her name, you guessed it, Bridget, in the flesh. At this point I'm wriggling with the excitement of seeing this girl in person, and the anxiety of having knowledge of what is about to happen to her without being able to reveal it. Over the next few days, little billboards start popping up around town. Bridget, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I love you. We all know how this is going to end. Bridget sees the tattoo, freaks the out, and this guy leads the rest of his life with an uncomfortable tattoo. But that's not what happened. He has dinner with Bridget, she sees the tattoo, and she completely changes her mind. She breaks up with her boyfriend, gets back together with her ex. And 3 months later they get engaged, they have a destination wedding, and are still married today. I know this because I saw both of them at that same pool 3.5 months later, and they both came over and Bridget gave me a big hug and thanked me. Also, the billboards earlier that month all over town that said, Bridget, I love you. Will you marry me? Help tip me off. And that's my story of how the dumbest tattoo I've ever done ended up being not dumb at all. I wouldn't recommend anyone else trying it though. Edit typo edited to add that I've had a few people ask to see my work, and since I'm not above shamelessly self-promoting, you can see it on my Instagram under the same username as here. Story 12. I judged one girl hard when she came into Dad's shop. She had just turned 18 the day before, and wanted 3 tattoos at once. The first was a hand holding a cigarette, the second said something along the lines of no regrets in French, and the third was a lip print on her. The irony was lost on nobody. Story 13. I wasn't there for this, but my artist told me a story. One of the only tattoos he ever refused to do was about this patchy creeper dude walking in the shop and asked for a tattoo of himself, naked with clown makeup on, with a sock over his junk, standing next to a little girl crying on her knees. Probably the most terrible, uncomfortable proposition I could imagine. Dude is probably dead or in prison by now. Story 14. I know a girl who was proud of the fact she was double-teamed. She got an Eiffel Tower tattooed on her ribs as a reminder that she 2 dudes at once. I was there when she got it tattooed and she was explaining to the artist why she was getting it, and the artist was not amused at all. He didn't even smile or anything. He just said, "Is that right?" a lot. He clearly didn't want to hear about this girl's sex life. I'm friends with a few artists who worked at that shop at the time, and they said when she left everyone made fun of her. They still talk about her sometimes if a story like that gets brought up. Edit to all the feminists sending me messages or comments about shaming. I'm not shaming, I'm telling a story. Stop trying to be offended. Story 15. Not a tattoo artist, but I've seen a few horrible tattoos. I was stationed at Fort Gordon for a short period of time, and 2 of the other guys in my platoon were betting against each other, and the loser had to get a tattoo. Nothing overly gross or obscene was the only rule. IRC. Standing in formation a few days later, and a drill sergeant tells one of the 2 to walk in front of the whole formation and show off his new work. Dude marches out front, pulls his shirt up and turns around. Staring me in the face is a full back-size tattoo of Sid the Sloth from Ice Age. Not just Sid the Sloth, but Sid the Sloth in baggy pants, wearing a gold necklace and throwing out gang signs. Story 16. An artist who used to work at the shop I frequent has a story. Some time ago a guy came into the shop, begging for a tattoo on his chest. Everywhere else refuses to do it. "Please, you have to," he pleaded. This is normally pretty foreboding, but the artist took a bite. "Well, what are you looking to get?" It was a swastika. A giant one at that would sprawl across the guy's entire chest. The artist declined. "No, we don't do like that here," but the customer was persistent. No other place would do it, after all. "I'll pay double, triple what someone normally would." Now, this means that the artist can make around $600 to embed a needle into a guy's chest thousands of times. So he got an idea. "Fine, I'll do it, but you pay all of it up front." Customer agreed, paid, and they set up to work. The artist deliberately pressed as hard as he could into this guy's chest, like blood everywhere, yelling "customer hard." The guy had to stop his tattoo about a third of the way through to take a break, where he promptly left and never came back. Edit gotten a few comments on the price sounding super cheap, so I'm just gonna add it here that the number was my best estimate, which is apparently way lower than I would have thought. I don't know what he actually ended up charging. Story 17. So when I was 19 I got my tattooed. It's a really fat, think round as a ball, dragon with dinky wing and derpy eyes eating a cookie. The artist, who's a friend of mine, looks at me and goes, "I gotta be honest, this is one of the stupidest tattoos I've ever done. Don't get me wrong, it's gonna look great when I'm done, but still, you're an idiot." I had to agree with him. 3 years later I love my dragon and have affectionately called him Sebastian Buttmunch. Story 18. Not a tattoo artist, but I spoke with one and he said he rarely judges his clients' choices except for one. He told me this woman requested to have flies and maggots tattooed around her vaginal area. He didn't even want to ask her why, he just copied her drawing, took her money and she left. Story 19. I was in the chair getting part of my sleeve done when one of the dudes came into the back room and told my tattooist that there was a young woman at the desk who wanted some stars tattooing on her arm. He sighed loudly and told the other guy to tell her that sorry, but they'd run out of stars, so no can do. Story 20. I particularly enjoy watching the couples that come in and want each other's names or matching tattoos. They always seem like they just hate each other. Lots of griping and bitching, low talking and indecisiveness. Story 21. Like Bowser from Super Mario Bros. On a surfboard playing a double neck guitar wearing sunglasses on a pot leaf on a cross saying, "Happy birthday, Rick." Story 22. I had a buddy who was a tattoo artist. He only refused to do two kinds of tattoos: Nazi bullshit and ICP bullshit. Everything else was free game. Edit: since so many people are asking what ICP is, I'm sorry to inform you, Insane Clown Posse. It is a rap group of white trailer park dudes from Detroit who dress like killer clowns. Their fans are called juggalos, and they number in the hundreds of thousands, if not million plus. They actually are categorized as a gang by the US government, but they are mostly just unorganized white trash kids, mostly harmless to anyone but themselves. The music is so bad that I don't even want to be the one to show it to you. I'd rather introduce you to meth and heroin. Edit 2. How silly that my highest rated comment is about ICPP. Story 23. Okay, so this story is actually my brother's, but one night a pretty drunk dude came into the shop and wanted a tattoo on his arm of Tinkerbell. Okay, not so bad, and underneath it he wanted the world my little flirt. Again, a little strange but overall fine, and then underneath that he wanted his sister's name. They told him that they don't tattoo drunk people, so he left. Story 24. I wanted to get a potato on my ankle since I was a kid. I'm 34 now and I still want one. I had a tattoo artist flat out refuse because he thought it was stupid. I tried to explain the reference but he wouldn't listen, so I'm pretty sure there was judgment there. Story 25. I'm a welder. I have a coworker with a Miller logo tattoo. Non-welders, this is the equivalent of an office worker getting a tattoo of the PowerPoint start screen. Story 26. Not a tattoo guy, just a guy who scrubbed into a few amputations. I can't give specifics, but if you ever find yourself in a position where you're going to lose a limb and want to make sure you're getting the best medical treatment ever, tattoo something ridiculously stupid in that area. A lot of surgeons I've worked with try to just get through the day, but they will put in 110 if it means preserving a particularly stupid tattoo. Story 27. My roommate dated a girl who would always follow your heart, because even though it's on the left, it's always right. I don't think it gets worse than that. Story 28. I'm a tattoo artist, and I've had some interesting requests over the years. Some of them are creepy. Doesn't help that I'm a lady, like the guy who wanted a back piece of him in bondage gear with a woman whipping him and would talk to nobody but me about it. Luckily at that time I was an apprentice and told him several times I wouldn't be tattooing for many months yet. Eventually he bugged off. Once I tattooed a straight black line on the top of some guy's head. He was maybe in his late 40s, seemed perfectly sane, in good health and completely normal. He had a very tiny and long-healed scar right where he wanted the tattoo, right alongside it. I questioned him for almost 40 minutes while I hemmed and hawed about whether or not I should turn it down. In the end, he convinced me he really did want this tattoo, and so I did it, even though it still kinda trips me out to this day. He had no other tattoos. Most recently, at a previous shop I was at last year, I fielded a phone call for a really weird request. The guy opened the phone call by saying he had already been turned down by several other local shops, which is definitely a red flag. He asked if I would tattoo a stack of heroin bricks on him. I actually took a moment to process that and asked him to repeat himself. He did. It didn't make more sense the second time. I told him I was not comfortable doing that, apologized, and we ended the call peacefully. He sounded disappointed but just no, don't want your heroin dealer money, pal. Edit. Wow, for some reason this is my highest rated anything on Reddit ever. It seems really appropriate that this comment is it, and line head guy seems to be mostly to blame for it. It's a story I've told countless times to my own clients and one I've been pleased to share with you, Reddit. Thanks. Story 29. I read a comment on a similar thread where a guy wanted a UPC code tattooed on his shoulder or back of the neck or something. At the time this was quite a common and cliché request, so the artist declined. The customer insisted, so the artist ran across the street to the pharmacy and bought a bottle of Massengill, and without letting the customer know copied the UPC code from there. Apparently he scanned it with his phone or something, and sure enough it came up as ID. Called it a pretty succinct judgment. Story 30. Know a guy who has a rooster getting hung. Is it hung or hanged? On his lower leg calf it's only saw he can say my always hangs below my knee or some to cover up that he probably has a small. Story 31. I love my friend, but he is fixated and says it's a fact that it doesn't matter what you get on your arm, as long as it looks fairly cool, because from a distance people will just say, oh, a sleeve. Nice, as if not a single person in the world will try to identify what the drawings on your arm are. His arm is riddled with random photos from a monk, scorpion, elephant, peacock, random noose, castle, rose, and it just looks like a jumbled mess. Like, come on man, he's probably poured close to $700 in, and with that cash he could have gotten a half piece from his shoulder down by a reputable artist here that looks dope AF. I wish he could take criticism, but he can't handle criticism or he breaks down. Story 32. When I was an apprentice for a short time, we had a few that we used to make fun of. Dream as if you'll live forever, live as if you'll die tomorrow. In script lettering, we called this one Carpe Diem for idiot shavs. This was pre-Wywello, by the way, which definitely replaced it. Dandelion petals blowing away, turning into birds, or the basic tattoo, Dreamcatcher, the old Pinterest favorite. Bonus points if they wanted it with a billion ideas incorporated into it, or wanted it a ridiculously tiny size, Japanese dragon. But specifically, ones that wrap around the arm. We had to bat away quite a few of those ideas. Religious-themed black and gray full arm sleeve, usually requested by Debros as their very first tattoo. I blame David Beckham for these ones. Not that any of the above are bad tattoos. Some of them can look really nice when done right, and most of them are probably an artist's bread and butter in terms of work. And if they genuinely mean something to you, good for you, but they're such common, fashionable ideas, and the amount of people who come in asking for them thinking they're the first to ever think of them was quite funny. Also, not a specific tattoo design as such, but if your opening question is how much for a full sleeve, you probably shouldn't be getting tattooed and you will be made fun of as soon as you leave the shop. Story 33. Not a tattoo artist. But oh well, my dad is one and has been for 15 years, including owning his own shop for 4 to 5. I have spent way too much of my life in a tattoo parlor to not have any tattoos, but I can tell you for sure, every artist I know hates on originality. If your tattoo is something they have done 5 times that week, they probably don't enjoy your tattoo one bit. They may enjoy your company if you're a fun person, but they hate doing that tattoo. If it has purpose to you, they may not even judge you for getting it, but they hate the tattoo itself. Tattoo artists are just that, artists. They enjoy creativity and uniqueness. At least this has been my experience. Now to answer the second part, my father's personal answer is anything religious on someone who isn't, a cross on an atheist or anything of that nature. He had several more examples, but this was the first out of his mouth when I asked the question. Story 34. My husband is a tattoo artist and he doesn't judge anyone unless they're being unreasonable. For example, you cannot expect a tiny tattoo with a ton of detail, it will blur together with time, and my husband cares about how his work will age. Some dude actually had his sister message him and aggressively ask why he refused his idea. People are dumb and they don't think about the big picture. Story 35. Not an artist but worked the counter in a couple shops. Someone came in asking for ghost, but like, someone wearing a sheet over themselves type of ghost, without any of the human parts though, and she wants it filled in. We let her know that it is essentially going to look like a big black blob with the eventual ink blowout, and she adamantly disagrees, so we did it. Still wonder what that looks like now. Also, some 18-year-old girl came in wanting prints on her inner lip, which was pretty ratchet. Story 36. I used to really look up to my cousin, even though my whole family knew he was doing hard drugs, and I used to love his tattoos, and it may have even started me on mine. Anyways, saw him a year or two ago, and I realized those tattoos are horrid, like he has a butchered Beavis and the others are too numerous, but so bad. Edit a letter. The artist I frequent has explicitly said he will refuse doing anything tribal or those infinity symbols. I asked him why he wouldn't do the infinity ones. He said, man, I spent my day tattooing creepypastas, dolls and creepy on you. The last thing I want to do is bum myself out tattooing that lame-assed, overdone symbol. It doesn't seem as funny written down as opposed to how he said it, but it gave me a chuckle at the time. Story 37. Not a tattoo artist, and I don't judge him for it, but my dad wants to get a tattoo of a ruler down his arm, as in a faint line every inch so he can measure things with it. That being said, I'm curious how y'all would react to someone asking for that tattoo. Story 38. My wife can read kanji. We were walking through Honolulu one day and a guy passes us with some big kanji characters on his chest. She starts laughing after he passed, because his tattoo said approximately, I'm a vegetable. We guess he wanted I'm a vegetarian. Story 39. When I was getting my first tattoo, the artist told the story of a guy who wanted Funky Elvis tatted on his. He ran out after Funky. Edit. Of course this would be my most successful comment ever, even with the embarrassing grammar. I don't judge people for the tattoos they want to get. Sometimes I just don't understand it really. I just chalk it up to different life experiences and taste. A lot of tattooers talk on normal people for getting common themes they pulled off Google infinity symbol, mandalas, feather exploding into birds, various trendy stuff, but I often don't see these tattooers offering the people an alternative or trying to show them something that's maybe more timeless or unique. Story 40. Rainy Tuesday. I was an apprentice, only type of day that we would take walk-ins. Guy comes in and hems and haws over flash, finally approaches the counter. Ice sparkling. I want an olive. He got a green manzanillo olive, red pimento and all, the size of a baseball on his bicep, first and only tattoo. We asked why an olive. He said, well, I'm dating a woman named Olive, sorta, but it's kinda going south, but that's okay, I really like olives. We judged him to be of less than average intelligence and taste, but no less awesome. Story 41. So way back in the early 90s I was great friends with an artist and hung out at their shop. A lot. The shop was in a seedy area, so we had a building in the parking lot of a shopping center that had a fun Mexican taqueria with pool tables, 2 really seedy adult strip clubs and a head shop and an adult theater. Yes, the clientele was, interesting. I've seen a girl get a sun tattooed around her. I've watched girls and guys get genital piercings. But there were 2 standouts. One girl got the 6-inch to 12-inch portion of a ruler on her inner thigh. But this one guy would come by from the strip club. He was always quite drunk. He wanted a simple tattoo. He wanted a Nazi swastika with a hand shooting in the middle. The artist refused and said, we want work on you if you're drunk. Repeat this every Friday night for like 6 weeks until finally the artist said it. Get in the seat. And he gave him exactly what he asked for, charged him double. Cue the very next Friday and a very drunk and very angry guy shows up looking for a cover-up. Nope, right off. Story 42. I have one regular tattooist I go to and he complains whenever he tattoos the you see in those dollar store tattoo books, but then says it's how you make the money. The people of the place where I come from are pretty homogeneous and their tastes are pretty much the same across the whole town. Story 43. I love tattoos. I'm not a tattoo artist, but my uncle married quite the nutcase in the early 2000s. They had a few kids together and a few years after that she got his name tattooed on her back, and I don't mean anything discreet that she could easily cover up. I mean she got Luis inked in giant 10-inch letters up and down her back. They divorced a few months later, She got remarried, but I don't know if she got the tattoo covered up or not. That or she's hiding it really well. Story 44. Do tattooists feel any responsibility or qualms about doing insane tats like something bizarre on their faces? I have a cousin that is half Jordanian that was brought back by her mom when she was 12. Absolute wild woman, covers in tats and is a tattooist herself. She shaved her head and had a bomb tatted on one side because everyone jokes she is a terrorist. Story 45. Not a tattoo artist, but I wanted to get a tattoo on my sort of the inner side, from the top of the to halfway up the cleavage. I went in and he said it wouldn't look good, and I'm so glad my tattooist changed my mind. He got me to draw a line where I wanted it with a Sharpie and see how long it lasted throughout the day. It didn't. Besides which, it was such a trashy idea. Hope this can help someone. Story 46. I had a lady ask me to tattoo Golden Palace, on her forehead, which she had sold on eBay. I said no. She went across the street and got it done. Look stupid as, Google it. I judged her for sure. It made the whole industry look stupid. I judged the who tattooed her more though. Story 47. I had this one teenager come in and ask for a tattoo. They had a simple request for it. A woman's name. I always get a little wary when people ask for a name tattooed on them because of the chance it'll go awry. But sometimes it's kids or deceased family. But I try to make sure they know the risks of it. I tell the guy, are you getting married? He said no. I asked, engaged? No. I asked, is this your prom date? He said no. I finally asked why he wanted the girl's name tattooed on him. He told me this was his female friend and she friend-zoned him for some Chad, and he was sure that if he got a tattoo of her name she would have to repay him with some dollars and leave that to be with a nice guy like him. I kicked the kid out. That's the reason I don't like to tattoo people's names. Story 48. We judge if they want stars, music notes, butterflies, infinity signs, or the hatchet man. We hate stereotypical tattoos that everyone gets. Be original. You're putting art on your body, not stamps. Story 49. My sister wanted to get a memorial tattoo for our mother. Took her to a buddy's shop to get it done. We went over all these different designs he took a couple hours to draw, and she finally settled on one she liked, paid the deposit for her appointment and scheduled everything. Day after her appointment, I meet up with her to see it. She told me she bailed out. According to her, he wanted too much to do it. Even though he gave her a huge discount and fit her into his busy shop schedule, he offered to return the deposit, but I declined due to embarrassment. Well, she ended up getting inked by some drunk dude she was hanging out with. He scratched her up and naturally the whole thing looked like a middle schooler's notebook doodle. The worst part besides the tat was that she had screenshots of my buddy's design and credited him on FB with a pic of her very shitty infected tat. He asked her to remove the tag and she flipped out and started trashing him and anyone who spoke negatively of mom's tattoo. She still thinks my friend tried to rip her off. She's done this to other tattoo artists and is constantly trying to get work for cheap or free. Obviously she is covered in really bad white trash clip art tattoos. I feel really sorry for any true artist that ever has to deal with her. Story 50. Oh man, not a tattoo artist, but I've got a full back and 2 sleeves, so spend a lot of time at studios. Love asking this question from different artists. Arm and exit sign above a guy's. He was sweating and shaking and stunk the whole time, and kept telling me it was because he's afraid of gay people. He didn't seem to get an exit as a place you go into. Turns out this was one of my better friends at the time, and everyone ridiculed him for the idea. He had a breakdown for around 3 days after getting it. Moral joke tattoos are very rarely funny after the fact. Craig, a poorly drawn medieval battle scene from some historical battle, that he wanted with all of the detail from his shitty drawing. I explained that the level of detail is impossible, offered some suggestions. Customer refuses and complains the entire time about how long it's taking, how it looks, blah blah. About halfway through ID had enough, told the guy to get the out and gave him his money back. Moral: show your artists some respect. It's their passion and career to give you something that looks good. Stop forcing your shitty napkin drawing on them. Also, don't be a ally. Some girl got me to tattoo over a hickey shed gotten from someone. Like a big purple and yellow bruise looking hickey. She would have been a young teenage, but our store didn't refuse people. She wound up with this horrible purple-yellow patch on her belly. Moral: if it seems like a good idea at the time. Cello, a friend tattooed a red lobster on a guy. Now I've actually seen this one. The guy was super proud and was happy to have his photo shared around the studio I was getting work done at. 50-something guy, first ever tattoo, a bright red lobster, the tail starting at his pelvis and the body extending the full length of his shaft, complete with legs wrapping around the shaft, even tattooed the... Unfortunately I can't find any pictures, but it was amazing, and ridiculous, hilarious and stupid. The tattoo artist that did it judged the guy but in a light-hearted way and everyone thought it hilarious at the end of the day. Bonus favorite tattoo story. I read an interview with a musician talking about a fan getting his signature tattooed on her chest where he signed it. Showed him the next time they were in town. Dude looked at it and said, "Man, that ain't my signature, I must been up, sorry." Story 51. My brother. He got DTD on his one cheek. I care not to find out, standing for drunk till death. He's now straight edge. No drink, drugs or smoking. Story 52. My boyfriend is a tattoo artist. He says the stupidest tattoos he's done so far were a toaster and a giraffe with sunglasses not on the same person. He doesn't question them because money. The stupidest tattoo I've seen him do was words on a lattice. It's painful and no one will ever be able to see it. A is just not a good place for a tattoo. Edit: that's just my opinion on the tattoo. Good for you. If you're getting tattoos for yourself, I'm not hating. It's just the worst to me because he tried to talk her out of it, like to put it on her collarbone or somewhere else. Head never tattooed and wasn't comfortable with it, but she pushed him to do it, which isn't smart, but it turned out good. Story 53. Kinda late to this, but I know I was judged pretty harshly when I got my first tattoo. I wanted a coin 50p piece with the word yes scratched into the surface of it. This is from a scene in Mr. Nobody. The artist tattooed the coin first with all the details while constantly asking if I'm sure you want me to this thing up. He even brought over the shop owner that was working on another tattoo and said something along the lines of, look at this nice coin. Now I made up with this yes. As a customer I was pretty uncomfortable with this. As from the start, this is exactly what I wanted. At any point in the process he could have refused my service, but I made it very clear from the start that I wanted this coin, from this movie, shown here in this picture holds up phone, with this text on it. I don't know what was going through his head or what judgment it was, but I certainly could feel the judgment.